All right. Good morning, everybody. I hope everybody had a nice couple of weeks off from me. I'm sure you missed it. I had a couple of people actually did come up and tell us that they miss listening on Saturdays. It's a nice cold Saturday morning. It's not that cold. It's about 50 degrees outside. It just feels cold. Anyway, our guest today is Judge Sheila Calloway, our juvenile court judge. Judge Calloway, thanks for being my guest today. How you doing?
I am feeling awesome. Thank you for inviting me. I've seen these shows and all the guests that you had, and I was like, is he ever going to invite me? And so I'm just thankful that I finally got the invite. Thank you.
Well, what can I say? It's not my fault. I'll have to blame somebody else. Anyway, we're glad you're here. Where are you? Where are you? Are you in your house?
I am not in my house. I'm actually at the office at juvenile court.
What is all that stuff behind you? There's a football back there. You got more stuff back there than I have, and I have a lot of stuff. What's the football? What is that?
So that is 1 year my staff, because I'm a huge Vanderbilt fan. So 1 year for my birthday, my staff got me a autographed football from the Vandy players.
That is really cool. I didn't know you were such a Vanderbilt football fan.
I am. I bleed black and gold.
Okay, I got it. So I'm looking back. What else is interesting back there? You got posters. You got frame stuff.
So
could I have some of that for an auction that we're having coming up?
Yeah,
it's all kinds of stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah, all that's my Vandy stuff. You can't see, I have a Titans area as well because I'm a huge Titans fan.
Yeah.
I also have my, for Christmas this year, my assistant Kim Head got me a little tiny shovel and a hat that's on top of the football that says NYCE, Dreams Do Happen. And that stands for Nashville Youth Campus for Empowerment. And so I have my little shovel and my little helmet for that, for when we're ready to break ground.
To break ground, that's what I was going to ask you. So you're ready to go.
I'm ready to go.
Is it a big shovel or is it enough to break ground, or do we have to get you?
We'll probably have to get a bigger one. I can break a little, like an ant pile or something with that one.
All right, that's good to know. If I ever need to go after an ant pile, I'll call you.
I got it. I got you.
Okay, one more question before we get going. So you talked about having a Titans area, a Vanderbilt area, to your left shoulder, to my right, but to your left. What is that? Is that a whole nother area? What is that area for?
Yeah, I have a son. He's now 18 years old, but that's his area. And so there's all his pictures of him growing up from when he was young and when he was a baby. And I took him pictures, and he's holding the Titans football because I made him a Titans fan as well. And then when he was swimming, and then there's pictures when he was in McGavick band, the best band in the nation. And when he's at McGavick School, and then there's a picture of him graduating from McGavick High School last year.
Very, very cool.
That's his section.
Is there a section in your office for the Metro Council and the Vice Mayor?
So what had happened was,
you keep looking there, Your Honor. Okay, so when we have you back, then you can tell us that you've got one made. Okay.
Right. I think we used to have like the poster that comes out every time y'all have elections. We used to have that somewhere in the office.
Yeah. Okay. Now I assume it's not up anymore. Okay, that's good. Good to know, Your Honor. So our guest today is Judge Sheila Calloway, who is our juvenile court judge. Thank you, Judge Calloway, for being on today. I know that Brenda Wynn is on, our county clerk, and we'll announce anybody else who pops on today. We had a lot of questions for the judge, so we're going to hop to it. I'm thinking whether I need to announce anything. We had a council meeting the other night. It was the first time, as I remember, that we ever had a public comment period what I would call kind of a public hearing on the budget before the budget was actually ever given to us. I know the mayor is working on the budget right now with his department heads, but we had a really good conversation for about 2 hours with people who had signed up to give us some input about what they wanted to see in the budget before we actually got the budget. Usually we have our public hearing on the budget after we've already gotten the budget and after we've already had all our budget hearings and most of the budget is finalized. We will have that in June. That's required by the charter, but working with our council member Berkeley Allen, the chair of the budget committee this year, we had one earlier. So if you're interested in what people had to say, then you can go back and watch us on YouTube. Anyway, we are with Judge Calloway. Our first question, as always, Judge, is tell the viewing audience a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? And what have you been doing all these years? And how did you become our juvenile court judge?
And I promise, Vice Mayor, I'm going to try and keep the comments less than an hour. How about that?
That's fine. I mean, if you're going to explain that for an hour, then I can just go ahead and turn off my mic and I'll tell you when to stop.
Love it. So I am originally from Louisville, Kentucky. I tell people that when I grew up, I thought I was in a kind of dysfunctional family. I have my parents who are still together 55 years later. They're still married, still together, and an older sister who believed that studying and reading books was just God-given. That's what she did each and every day. I was the rebel. I was the one that came in and was like, why do we have to go out to eat together? Why can't I go out and hang out with my friends? And I was the one that pushed the needle, that may have snuck out of the house a time or two. Those kind of things were the ones that I did. And I thought my family was dysfunctional because I got in trouble for stuff like that. I got punished and, I got grounded and all that other stuff. During that time period, my parents, who are both college educated, always said that education was the key and that they always made sure that we were going to be educated. And so there was never an option of us going to college or not. It was always like, okay, what college do you plan on doing? And what are you going to do when you get there? And so early on, I knew I wanted to be a lawyer. And I wrote a paper like when I was in 4th grade that said I was going to be a lawyer and I was going to help people. And so I stayed on that track. And my dad was always pushing me and always saying, you got to do harder. You can't come in here with C's. You got to do that. And I'm like, C's average, Daddy. I'm good. And he was like, no, you got to do better because one day you're going to be a judge. I was like, whatever. I'm just going to be a lawyer. I'm good with that. And so they pushed me. And I ended up wanting to go to Vanderbilt University. So I left Louisville, Kentucky, quickly in a hurry. As soon as my mom and dad said I could go, I was out. And I came to Vanderbilt. I majored in communication. I was my major, and my minor was political science because I still knew I wanted to go to be a lawyer and go to law school. Didn't like political science at all. Didn't like politics or anything about it, but said, I better take some classes just because I'm going to be a lawyer. After I graduated from undergrad, went to law school, stayed at Vanderbilt. So I'm a double door. I bleed gold. And that's why I have the Vanderbilt shrine in the back. When I started at Vandy Law School, I thought I wanted to do entertainment law because I think you might know, Vice Mayor, but I love to entertain. I love singing. And so I thought I could be an entertainment lawyer, end up representing Whitney Houston. And if she ever got sick, I could say, no, don't cancel the concert. Here I am. And I will always love you. So I thought that was going to be me, but I did really, really bad in contracts. And so someone said, if you can't do contracts, you're not going to be a good entertainment lawyer. And I thought, oh, okay, maybe I should look at something different. So my summer after my first year in law school, I worked at a small law firm, Silent Homemaker in Louisville, Kentucky. And they did a lot of general practice stuff, and I did a little of everything. But the thing that I loved the most was the criminal law. And so when I came back for a second year, I focused my studies on criminal law classes, did well in them. And so I thought maybe this is the career for me. I had the opportunity to work at the criminal clinic at Vanderbilt University at the summer of my second year. And I worked under the best advisor, Susan Kay. And she helped me kind of just decide what I wanted to do. I got to go to prisons and meet my clients, and got to go to court. And I was like, this is it. This is what I want to do. Well, I've always wanted to help people. And so I actually got to argue a case in front of the Criminal Court of Appeals as a third-year law student under the supervision of Dean Kay. And I won. My conviction was overturned, and he got out, time served. And so I said, this is really life-changing. This is what I want to do. And so she had a good relationship with Carl Dean, who was the public defender at the time. And she asked me, did I have a job after law school? I did not at the time. And so he interviewed me, and she arranged for him to interview. So you got to interview this girl. And so he interviewed me, and he will tell a story that he gave me a job on the spot, but he did not. He said, I can hire you, but I can't pay you until October. So I was like, well, okay, then I'll start in October. And so that's when I started working in the public defender's office. I was a public defender in the adult division for about 4.5 years. Absolutely loved it. Loved my time, particularly with Judge Tom Shriver before he passed. And learned a lot from Judge Shriver. I think he was just the model of what a judge should be. Very fair, very honest, lots of integrity. He just gave people a chance when they deserved it. And I really believe that if he had a lot to do with the way that I am today. After he died, I kind of lost my footing and didn't really want to do criminal court anymore and wanted a change. And there was an opening in the juvenile public defender's office. And that was in 1998. I asked Carl if I could take it, and he said, sure. And I said, okay. And so that was literally at the end of the year, 1998. And I've been in the building ever since, except for the time when I left to campaign to be the judge. So I was a public defender for juveniles from 98 until about 2004, when Judge Betty Adams Green appointed me to be one of the magistrates. It was an absolute thrill to work for her and work as a magistrate. And I started to hear my dad's voice. I told you were going to be a judge. I told you were going to be a judge. And so then I got to say, well, the C's didn't really matter, Daddy. I made it anyway. So after Judge Green announced that she was retiring, I decided that this was the job for me. And so I campaigned from November of 2013 until I was successful in my win for juvenile court judge. And in the last term, May 2014. And so I've just finished or getting ready to finish my first 8-year term as juvenile court judge. Absolutely love coming to work each and every day.
That's amazing. You've got all kinds of interesting stories going on there. Did you ever take singing lessons?
You know, I never took singing lessons, but I sing all the time.
Do you sing on the bench? Do you sing while you're on the bench sometimes?
I do sing on the bench. If a song hits me, if the mood is right, I will sing a song on the bench, especially if we have, and for people who don't know, in juvenile court, it's a whole lot more family court than is really kids that do delinquent acts. We do so much more than that. And so a lot of our cases are dealing with youth who are in Department of Children's Services custody for whatever reason, whether they've been abused or neglected. And we have to have like permanency hearings where we're checking on them. And so a lot of times if they come to court and it's near their birthday, then we'll give them a little birthday gift, and I'll sing happy birthday to them always. And it's the Stevie Wonder version. Happy birthday to ya. So we do a lot of singing.
I think I got a message from you last year with a birthday wish.
You did. You absolutely did.
Thank you. So my birthday is coming up in a couple of months, so I'll remind you. I will come to your office and sing to you. Oh, thank you. I'd rather you come to the council meeting and sing. So
we'll do that as well.
We'll see if we can get that arranged. Okay, so tell people about juvenile court. So for people who don't have any idea what juvenile court is all about, explain generally, obviously, the process of what the court sees, who comes before it, and the I guess what happens in terms of actually the people who come before the court, what could happen to them.
So absolutely that, and it's a lot, and literally this could take a good hour to explain. But one of the things that juvenile court is a statutory court. And so we are built by statutory. There's, chancery courts and criminal courts are more of a common law type of thing, but we are based on statute. And what it basically says that our job is to provide for the care, protection, and wholesome moral, mental, and physical development of the children coming within its provision. And this is what the statute says that we are supposed to do. And we are supposed to remove from children the taint of the criminality and the consequences of criminal behavior, and substitute, therefore, a program of treatment, training, and rehabilitation. And so I am glad that our state legislature long ago put that in the statute, because there is a difference between adult court and juvenile court. And juvenile court is not about locking kids up and not about just being punitive in nature. We are supposed to be substituting a program of treatment, training, and rehabilitation for our youth. And we generally are to deinstitutionalize children who are not found to be delinquent. And so we are helping our youth to literally make a positive change in their lives. So we do that in several different ways. When I talk about juvenile court and everything that we do, I kind of categorize it in 3 different ways. So the first category of cases that we handle, which is actually the biggest number of cases that we handle, are our parentage cases. And these are cases of unmarried parents. And we are determining everything from, we do DNA testing in the courtroom. I usually have, when I'm doing a speech, I bring out the envelope and I open up the envelope and I say, like they do on Jerry Springer, and congratulations, you are the daddy. And so we do that. We don't do it as dramatically as they do it on Jerry Springer, but we do. We actually do DNA testing in the courthouse every Thursday. You can come and get your DNA tested.
You don't have those people like on the Jerry Springer show that run around and hold people back on purpose. You have that?
Occasionally we have some drama. Occasionally we do. But we determine paternity. Based on the statute, we determine who should be the primary residential parent, who should be the alternate residential parent, and how much time each parent should have with their child. We determine if they're alternate residential parent, how much child support they should have. And if they don't pay their child support, we determine what should happen if they don't pay their child support. So all of that is our parentage cases. And we have 3 magistrates who work under my leadership, who are designated for handling the parentage matters. What I absolutely believe, and what their studies show, is that if we have 2 parents who are active in a child's life, there is less likelihood that they are going to end up in the criminal system. And so for us, one of our biggest things is that we are trying our best to teach these parents how to co-parent. And so we use a lot of different agencies like the Family Center. Every time I do this, I forget names, but we partner with about 3 different agencies that offer parenting classes, offer co-parenting skills. And we make sure that the parents who need the help are able to get that. We also have 6 what we call our parental assistant court specialists on staff. And those people, 3 of them are currently Rule 31 mediators. The other 3 are going through training in April. But their main goal and objective is to remove barriers from the non-custodial parent so that they can spend time with their child and so that they can pay their child support. And so what we know is if people are connected to their children, they're not as bitter about having to pay child support, because when you have to spend, or not have to spend, but when you get to spend, a week with your child and you see how much they eat, you see how much they grow, and you got to buy new shoes and how much that costs, then you start to understand, oh, I get why it's important for us to support the child. And so there's less bitterness. So since we started our parental assistance court, our collections of child support have increased tremendously. And the number of parents who have left the courtroom with a parenting plan has also increased significantly. And what that means is that they're learning how to co-parent and they're getting along a lot better. And so
what are the punishments? Age requirement? Is there an age requirement for people coming into before the court on this one?
Nope. On the parents, unfortunately, there are sometimes we have teen parents as well that come through the system. So there's no limit. I will say, fortunately, we have very few teen parent cases, which is a good thing. But we will start working with you whatever time is. One of the things I always encourage student groups to do when they want to come and view the courtroom is to come and sit into one of our parentage cases, especially those that are highly contested, because what we tell them is like, see, this is why it's important to practice. If you're going to engage in sex, it's important to practice safe sex, because you don't want to be connected to someone who you can't get along with for at least 18 years. And you, even as a student in high school, you could be ordered to pay child support based on the child support guidelines. And so it's important to teach that lesson early. And so a lot of times when student groups come through, that is one of the things that we talk about, and that we encourage them to practice safe practices.
So you always hear a lot about people, for years, about people not paying child support. What is the practice in your juvenile court about making sure people do understand the importance of it? And what are the sanctions that you can hold against an individual if they don't do it?
So the absolute worst sanction you can hold against a person who doesn't pay child support is to incarcerate them for a period of up to 6 months. For us, that is the absolute last resort. For me, it doesn't make sense that I'm locking someone up because they're not paying a fine or paying a support. Because what happens to them when you lock them up, they're going to lose their chance of a job for that 6 months. A lot of times they're going to lose their housing. They're going to lose anything it would take for them to be a successful member of our community. And so what we do is we have that person work with our parental assistance court specialist instead. And so there's a lot of barriers that prevent people from paying their support or paying the amount. One of them is if they have criminal records, they're limited on what type of jobs that we have. And so because I have the relationship with the public defender's office, our PAC specialists work with particularly Maynette McMichael in the PD's office and help them to figure out what cases can be expunged from their records. And if it's fines or fees that they still owe, having to get some of those fines and fees waived by the criminal courts or the general sessions courts. And so we work with that barrier. If it's a barrier that they don't have job skills or don't have any type of job, what we do is we work with organizations like Goodwill, 413 Strong, and other agencies that help with job training for our clients. And so we will connect them to an agency like that to get them on their feet, to give them job skills and job training so that they can go out and get a job so that they can pay their support. We have, a lot of our clients don't have driver's license. And I know Vice Mayor has been working on this for years on improving our transportation system, but it's not at the best quality as it is right now. And so a lot of times, if you don't have a car and you live in a outlining area, it's hard for you to get to a place where you can work. And so we work on working with them and DHS in the public defender's office and making sure that we can get them their license back. If it's mental health treatment, we have some agencies who work at whatever it is that's keeping them a barrier of getting a good job so that they can pay their support. We're working to alleviate those barriers. And so what we have found is when we do that, we have a better success rate of them paying. And sometimes it's not that they can pay the entire amount. And sometimes we work with them and try to get their amounts modified so they can pay a reasonable amount that they can afford to pay. And so those are the things that we do. Instead of just locking people up, we like to remove the barriers that keep them from doing it, explain to them the importance of why they need to support their children and how make sure they're having a good relationship.
Got it.
So that's 1/3 of the cases that we handle.
Right.
So the next third of the cases that we handle are neglect, dependent and abuse cases. These are the cases that 9 times out of 10 are generated by the Department of Children's Services. And these are the cases that you hear where a parent has passed out in the car and left a child unaccompanied, or actual physical abuse or sexual abuse to a child. What our role is not to prosecute the parent, but to make a determination on what's in the best interest of that child. And so is it in the best interest of the child to be returned to the parent, return a parent with some type of services, or is it best for the child to be placed with a relative, or is it best for that child to be placed in the Department of Children's Services custody? We have literally 1/3 of the cases that we deal with those types of issues. And what we absolutely know is that children who go through the trauma that leads them to neglect and dependent abuse cases have a higher likelihood of ending up in the system later on as a juvenile or in the criminal adult system. And so it is super important for us to do a lot of preventive work on those types of cases. And so we work hard with the Department of Children's Services and our parents to make sure that we are getting them whatever it is to need to learn how to be a better parent. So we have a Safe Babies Court. We were the first one in the state to have a Safe Babies Court. Now there are 12 jurisdictions across our state that have those. Those courts work with parents who have lost their children between the ages of 0 and 3. And yes, we get babies who are brand newborn in the custody of our Department of Children's Services, usually because of drug abuse while the child was in vitro. And we get those children and we work hard with the parents, with the foster parents, with the relative placement to find that stability and that resilience for that child. We absolutely 100% believe the brain science is true. And so we know that between 0 and 5 is when 0 to 3 is when the brain is doing all the pruning that it takes to grow properly. And when there's been some trauma to that brain or to that child, that the brain does not develop the same. And so we work hard to make sure that that child will be resilient and will have safe, structured, loving, nurturing caretakers for the rest of their life. And so the Safe Babies Court is a program that does it in a very intensive way. And so, if I could get all the cases that we had in Safe Babies Court, we would do so much better with the welfare of so many children in our community.
Yeah, I was going to ask, how does a case end up in Safe Babies Court?
So it is a referral based on the Department of Children's Services. If they know that they have a child that's between 0 and 3 that needs to be removed from the parents, based on whatever the issues are, they will send a referral to our staff. And we have Jill Overton is our coordinator, and she will interview the parents and see if they're willing to do it. It is a voluntary program because it is so intensive. And so she'll spend some time with them, explaining to them all of the things that they will be doing, and really is supportive. And it's supposed to be a supportive program. And, it's instead of sending them referrals and saying, you need to go do parenting classes, go over here, we're walking them. Our coordinator, Jill, is, walking them hand in hand to say, this is our provider, this is your team. And they have child and family team meetings every week to make sure that the providers are on board, that the parents are all doing what they're supposed to do. And so that's how cases get referred. We do the department refers them. We meet with the parents to see if they are want to be a part of it and are qualified, and then they come in. Unfortunately, our magistrate is Magistrate Jerice Glanton, who does the Safe Babies Court. We only have enough money for her to do. She's a part-time employee, so she can only do the Safe Babies Court 1 day a week. And so we're limited on how many cases we can actually take. But the cases that we have taken and the families that we have done in our Safe Babies Court have been extremely successful.
So tell me about the, where does the funding come from for this court?
That is a state grant. The funding comes from the Tennessee State. It's run through the Department of Mental Health and along with the Department of Mental Health and
Substance Abuse, I think.
That's it. So the money comes through that. It's allocated by the state legislature and it's run through that program. Is there
talk about increasing the funding so that so one of the questions would be the results that you're getting out of the program from a limited program seems to be really, really good. Why don't we fund it? Why don't we fund it more?
So there was definitely talks of adding additional funding through the state. But I think when the final budget, and I think they're still working on their final budget, but I think that some of that money got cut, or the money that they were going to add to it went to bring in some other jurisdictions versus adding more money for our jurisdiction. So we have not talked about extra funding for that program through Metro government. And that's probably something that we should look at if the state's not going to increase it. But we do have great results from our Safe Babies Court, and we definitely want to support it.
And if anybody's interested in looking or finding out more about Safe Babies Court, is there a place you can go on the website or something to find out kind of how it works?
There is. You can go to our website, the Juvenile Court website, and we have information about our Safe Babies Court on there. And it is modeled statewide after the 0 to 3 nationwide program. So it's a nationwide program. Tennessee is probably one of the mid-range getting it started. We weren't one of the earliest states, but we're in there. We're in the race. But it is based on 0 to 3 model, and that's a nationwide. And you can go to their website. They have webinars almost weekly, or at least monthly, about the importance of having Safe Babies Courts.
Okay. All right. So go back and talk about, we were talking about neglect, dependent abuse, other things that happen with kids coming through that, they're brought into the system because of that.
And we have youth that are brought into the system that range from any age from 0 to 17. And these literally are youth who, no fault of their own, are ending up into the court system. And these are also youth that we know, through no fault of their own, if they end up in the foster care system or Department of Children's Services custody, particularly older youth, there are so many placement issues that they end up literally being part of the other side, the juvenile justice side of the system, as well as these are the kids that when you look at homelessness, at young adults between 18 and 25, the biggest number of those are youth who have been in foster care system. And so we are trying our best to partner with the Department of Children's Services and with a lot of different agencies to make sure that these youth are getting all of the services that they need, all of the help that they need. I think I see a couple of people who are on our foster care review boards that are on this call, that they are also very good about bringing up to the court things that might be lacking that the department is not providing for these youth, because it is so important that we get them to a point where if they cannot find a forever home or adoptive home, that they have supportive systems that they can make it. I cannot imagine what my life would have been if I hadn't had the support of my parents. And a lot of these youth don't have that support from parents. And if we're not giving them these things, then they are going to end up in our homeless communities or in our criminal justice system. And so, we have recovery courts for our parents that are similar to the recovery courts in the criminal court, but it's a process that they go through to try and get their children back, where we're trying to make sure that they are doing everything they can to learn how to parent and to be better parents. Because ultimately, what we know is the kids are going to go back to their parents if they can, regardless of what the parents have done to them. And what we need to do is we need to support the parents on being better parenting. And it's a lot of work, but we're trying the best that we can. We are at a all-time low on placements in foster care beds throughout the state, and it is very troubling. We have a lot of youth, and there was a news story done recently by News Channel 5, Ben Hall, about the number of youth that were spending nights in the offices of Department of Children's Services. It is extremely traumatizing. And when I think about our youth that go through these things, and literally they are in DCS custody for nothing that they did, something that their parents have done. And the fact that we are having them spend the night in an office sometimes is so disheartening. And so, if anything community people can do is step up and to be part of the foster care system, offer, if you're able, step up and try and be a foster care parent, because our youth absolutely need help.
Judge, one of the questions that had come in over the week was talk about flaws in the process. And I mean, you can read that into different things, but that seems to be, you could call it a flaw, you could call it a gap, that we don't have enough placements for these kids. And then you worry about, because then you mentioned homelessness, kids are kind of a product of how, they're brought into this world, and they're a product of how they're brought up. But how could we fix something like that? I know you could do more foster care, but are there other examples of ways to fix this?
One of the things that we try and encourage people to do is, before we have to resort to the foster care system, is to help families. We want to expand a child's village. And, at some point in our history, we lost that sense of village, that we need to step up and help other people. But we got to, I remember at a time when I was without a job and my husband didn't make that much money. And it wasn't like a bad time, don't get me wrong. But I had so many people that were like, let me take, Trey for the day. Let me go and give him some food or give him dinner. Let us help. I had that village, and I had built my village, over years, through church, through friends, and, through work connections. But a lot of our families don't have that village. And, I always say we have about 86,000 students in our school system. And we have a whole lot of more people in our community, right? And so each of us took one child that wasn't our child, but there was someone else's child, a neighborhood child, a friend, a church person, and took the time to really mentor and help that child. That if something were to happen to the parents, if something were to happen with drug abuse or alcohol abuse or whatever it is, that child still has a village that they can count on. And that person could stand up and be a placement option for us. And so if we could build a child's village, even before there's even a thought of Department of Children's Services custody, then that village can help those parents if they're struggling. And they can help them if there's drug, they can take time with these child. And so I always encourage people, the system is broken. The system does not work, particularly for our brown and Black youth who are 15, 16, 17 years old. The system doesn't work. And, we can get babies adopted really easy and in foster care placements. It's so much easier to place babies. But once they're 10, 11, 12, 13, and they start having 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 attitudes, which we all had, and we all have them, and it's a little more difficult to deal with, then we don't have placements for them. And so we got to stop it before it happens, and everybody in the community can be a part of that.
Okay, so a couple of questions from that. Somebody to ask about demographics, the demographics of the kids coming into the system, and then following that, give us some ideas about how to fix it. If a foster placement being one, if you had that magic wand, what would you do? So demographics first, and then I'll go back to the magic wand question.
Absolutely. And before I get to demographics, is I can also add, so the 2/3 of the cases that we handle deal with the parents. And if I could do more work with parents, then I think we would have less youth that are committing offenses. And so the last third of the category of cases that we deal with are the kids who have committed either crimes or status offenses. Now, overall, as the system, we are primarily, I would say about 60% of the cases that we deal with are minorities, and the 40% are majority. When you look at our delinquency cases, that number flip-flops, and it's about 90% of the kids that we work with are kids of color, Black kids and Hispanic kids, and the rest of them are white kids. When you look at our neglected dependencies, it's about, it could be about equal, about 50-50 white kids, and then 50-50 on the other side, minority youth. And then when you look at our parentage cases, it's about 60-40 minorities. And so we are serving the priority people that we are serving are minorities. Further demographics, the majority of the people that come through the juvenile system are under the poverty guidelines. Most of the people that come through our system cannot afford their own attorney. And so all of the youth get appointed attorneys. For parentage cases, unfortunately, by statute, we cannot appoint attorneys to represent them, but the majority of them that come through would be qualified to have an attorney represent them. In our neglect dependency cases, they do get appointed attorneys, and at least 80-90% of the parents that come through on our neglect and dependency side qualify for appointed attorneys. And when I say qualify, we use the federal guide on indigency levels, and literally it's about 15, if you make $15,000, wait a minute, yeah. Okay, I'm getting the numbers wrong, but it is such a low, it's a low amount that you make yearly and monthly to qualify. And it baffles me that 80-90% of the clients that we have, the amount of money that they do not make is eye-opening. So there's a lot of poverty that we deal with in our court system, in our community. So, fixes, we work a lot with the police department as well as our school system on identifying early the youth that are in need. And we try our best to make sure that they're getting all the services that they can. The best way that people in the community can help, if you can't be a foster parent, and I get it, I probably couldn't be a foster parent because the child be like, where's my mama? She's always at the office or whatever. That's what Trey would say, although he would come with me. Everybody can't do a foster parent kind of thing. But there are ways that you can support other people. There is a group, and this was a story like on the news where this woman was a foster parent, but she knew that every time she took in kids, she would need diapers, she would need car seats, she would need clothes, she would need suitcases. And so she started a group that collected those things. And so when someone went to foster care, they would send those things to them. Whatever that child needed, they would send them. That helps. Literally, these children are taken out of their homes with nothing. and they don't have a suitcase. And whatever the caseworker is not, when they're being removed from the home, they're not going to get clothes and pick it. They're literally just picking the child up and saying, come with us, we're going here. And they go with nothing. And so suitcases, collect suitcases and donate them to the Department of Children's Services or to juvenile court, and we can pass them out. We are starting a second harvest food bank here at the court because we know that people that come through our court system may not have had food. You know, the school systems have done an amazing job of making sure that throughout COVID, throughout holidays, that our kids still have the ability to eat and that they have the ability to get whatever it is that they need, whether it's, you know, school uniforms, whatever. We're doing a good job. We could always do more. You know, to support the school system, you can go through the Pencil Foundation and give whatever it is that you can, books and notebooks and pencils, and because people in our community absolutely need that. Support things like Second Harvest Food Bank and other organizations that are collecting food. Our youth are in so many ways, the ones that we support are in food deserts and don't have the ability to get good nutritionist food. And so we've got to work together and be that village. So whatever your passion or whatever your ability to help can be, whether it may not be keeping foster kids, it may be, you know, organizing for your neighborhood, a safe place for kids to go after school. You know, we know there was a while ago that the council was considering a bill on changing the curfew time for youth, because there was the thought that if youth aren't in the house earlier, that the crime would go up. But the truth of the matter is most of the youth crime is happening in the daytime. Literally between 2 and 8 is a lot of times where crimes that our youth are doing. And the reason is because they don't have anything else to do. And so school out for high schoolers at 2, for middle schoolers out at 4. And if a parent is working and that's the only parent in the home and they got to work to 6 or 7 or 8 in the night, who's watching those children and what are they doing? And so we as a community have to be able to provide better community sources for our youth. So when they don't have idle time, because I know when my parents were home, I was the rebel. I probably did some things I shouldn't do. You know, it was by the grace of God, I didn't get caught on a whole lot of them. But there's these things that our youth are doing, and it's because we're not providing good quality aftercare services for them. So that's something that we should do as a community as well.
Okay, so let me follow up on that. So obviously we have community centers around the city. Is one of the problems that we don't have enough? Well, it may be twofold. One is kids don't go to those after school, a community center, or maybe we don't have enough programming that's enticing young people to go. So again, that magic wand, if you were to talk to the mayor, the city council, the state legislature, and they were going to go, Judge, what is it? What is it that you want? What would it be? What are the keys?
So I think it's a little of both of what you said. I think there has to be enticing programs and there has to be more of them. And so, I'm very impressed with the work that NASA does, but they're super limited. They're only in a few of the middle schools around our county. We should have for every NASA, and I don't know what it stands for, National After School Zone Academy. I don't know what it stands for, but we should have NASAs in every middle school for all those youth who don't have anything else to do. And it should be free. When my child had to do after school, I had to pay for it. Not a big deal because I had the ability to pay for it, but there are a lot of parents who don't have the ability to pay for after school programming. So NASA's came about, I believe, under Mayor Dean's administration, NASAS came to support those schools and those students and parents that weren't able to afford the typical after school programs. So NASA should be one of those things that we should fund for every single middle school around the county. And those are good programs. All of our community centers definitely should be funded more, and they should have more after school programming that is interesting to the youth. I'm super happy that Chief Drake recognizes the importance of sports in youth and is rebuilding the PAL, the Police Athletic League. I got one of those acronyms right, and is getting ready to start that up. That's going to be a huge game changer for so many of our youth that need something. So and when you think of these after school programming, they need to be open from as early as 2 p.m. to as late as 9 p.m. And it should absolutely have different types of programs for people, because there are some people who are not athletic. And so for those kids, and it might be arts or something with the arts, whether it's visual art or creative arts or singing arts, whatever it is, that should be in that program as well. So, a family of kids that a parent has to work for however long they have to work can make sure, and there has to be transportation. So we absolutely have to be able to have transportation from the school. So you get on the bus and the school's going to take all these kids to this community center, and there's going to be different programs at each and every one of those programs. That can make a big difference. And so we as a community just have to really support those programs that are already in. And if we had a magic wand and we could say, Vice Mayor Shulman, get this done, and we would have free after school programming for each and every child, and that has transportation as well for all of our students.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Is there, with that magic wand, has anybody ever come up with a plan to do that? I mean, I'm talking about a group of people that sit down and go, okay, let's figure out where the transportation needs, and let's figure out how we make this work.
So I know that we did I know Ronnie Stein did a whole lot of work on the child and family master plan for the community several years ago. And those kind of issues were outlined. And I believe when we did Nashville Next as well. And I think I was on one of those committees that talked about what we needed for our youth and community. That was something that was discussed and talked about. Beyond that, I'm not sure if we were able to support it through the entire government and the budget.
Wouldn't it be nice if we actually designed a plan and said, this looks like a good idea, and then instead of putting that report up on the shelf, we actually implemented it?
Oh, it would be awesome, because we did a lot. I attended a lot of meetings during the National Next project, and I think there were a lot of good plans that were outlined and things that were prioritized and things that did. And a couple of years later, I don't know what happened to it.
Well, so maybe you should hold me accountable and I go get the plan and see. I mean, obviously the city has money in different ways. I mean, with all the federal money coming down, it'd be nice to actually implement this. And again, as we started this conversation, we talked about some of the things that came out Tuesday night about budgeting. Some of it can be led back to putting money into programs so that people never go into the court system. They never show up in juvenile court because they have things to do and they have opportunities and they have programs that they can take advantage of.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So we have about 6 minutes left. So I've got a couple of questions for you. I'm just going to throw them out really quick. Somebody to ask about rehabilitation. Obviously, that's I assume that's something that the juvenile court does. Explain that, and then also somebody to ask about restorative justice.
Absolutely. So, our main goal is rehabilitation, and brain science. Again, what the brain science shows. And I went to school literally not to have to do science and math, but as I get older and I talk more about youth and all of our issues, I find that I'm doing a whole lot of science talk, which is odd. But what the brain science says is that our minds don't fully develop until we're about 25. For men, Vice Mayor Shulman is like 40. But for women, it's like, 20. Y'all just bring down the average. But anyhow, so 25.
Okay, I got it. Okay, good. Okay.
So 25, the prefrontal cortex is the last thing that develops. That's the decision-making part of our brain. And so when I look at he's 18 now, but when he was like 14, I'd look at him and say, Trey, was there a good reason why you did that? What were you thinking? And he looks at me like, I don't know. That's because they weren't thinking. That's because they haven't developed that prefrontal. They can't, those processes. And so even though they might know right from wrong, they don't understand consequences as well. And so what our goal is to make sure that we are putting them into positive programs, structured places, so that they can learn how to make better decisions, that they can be rehabilitated. Absolutely, every single one of these children that come to the system has an opportunity to be rehabilitated. When you absolutely learn about child development, you learn about adverse childhood experiences, you learn about how trauma affects the actual brain development, and the brain development is different. And so a lot of times we were labeling children as ADHD, whatever ADHD stands for, attention deficit disorder. And a lot of times it wasn't really ADHD. It was because their brains had not developed properly because of the trauma that they had. And so we can work with them on becoming resilient over this trauma, and it can be done. You can rehabilitate no matter how your brain is structured. We just have to make sure that we're providing them good, positive, structured, loving homes to be in, and programs that will help them to learn better. So that's rehabilitation, absolutely 100%. And we use so many different programs to help us with the work, because we can't do it as the court. We need community members and community programs to help us. And so we work with Oasis, Epic Girl, Men Gang, Gentlemen Are Not Gangsters, why we can't wait. There's a list of them that we work with, that we send the children to them and say, help them to do better. And they do. They have wonderful success rates. So as the restorative justice, I'm a huge fan of it. I want to expand it as much as I can. Our current justice system does not work. And so if you are a victim of a home burglary and you are in trial, they convicted that they found a person that they think did it. You're in the middle of a trial. You're the victim. You're hurt, scared, all those things. You get on the stand. They ask you, what happened, and did you get his permission to come to your home? And how did you feel? The defense attorney is going to stand up and say, objection, Your Honor. Her feelings are irrelevant. This is about this, that, and the other. And so the victim never really gets an opportunity to say how they're hurt and how they can be made whole. And so our criminal justice system is not a just system. It's a criminal system, but it's not just. It's not just on either side. But when you look at restorative justice, it's different. It's about who was harmed, who caused the harm, and how do we fix that harm? And so you're spending more time with figuring out how this happened and how can we make sure it doesn't happen again, and how can we restore the people that are involved in it. And so in places that have restorative justice, the victim satisfaction rate is over 95%, because they absolutely, through some counseling, they get to learn how to sit in front of the person who caused them that harm and tell them what that has happened to them and how that has made them feel. And they get to hear from the person who caused the harm why they did it.
Yeah.
They get to be a part of how that person can be held accountable, and they get to move on and be a part of that plan. And so we are doing it now. We've had about 65, I want to say, the last note I saw, youth. We are partnering with an agency called Rafa Institute. Travis Claybrooks is the head of that institute. You can go to their website. There's information about them on our website as well. And literally, we do not prosecute those cases. Those cases do not come to the court at all. They are referred to Rafa Institute. Rafa reaches out to the victim, reaches out to the person who caused the offense, and they figure out if it can be successful. If it can, then they do it. They come up with a plan and a program. And of the 60-something youth who have been through it, only 2 of them have come back to the system later on for something else. So our recidivism rate for that program is out of the box wonderful. So we are showing that it works, and we're hoping to expand it and to do more with it.
Very, very good. Okay, we got like 30 seconds. There's a new, I call it the new juvenile court. You call it something else. So just tell really quick, what is happening with that?
So the Nashville Youth Campus for Empowerment, nice. National Youth Campus for Empowerment. We are excited. Metro has purchased property on Brick Church Pike where the Shrine Center currently is. We're doing testing to make sure that that's the appropriate place. It's about 14 acres. It's going to be an absolutely campus style, like a college. And it's going to have all of our providers. It's going to have a 24-hour assessment center for those youth who come in for status offenses, runaway, curfew violations, so we can assess them before we just send them back home and make sure that they're going home and appropriate with the proper services. We're going to have CASA on board. We're going to have a safe exchange center where parents can, instead of having to go to exchange your children at the police station, which is so traumatic, they can exchange it in a nice, safe house. We'll have just a lot of green space. It's going to be campus, building to building, wall to wall, trauma informed, and it's going to be nice. Nashville's Youth Campus for Empowerment. Woo!
Very, very good. You got it all in.
I know. I
Ladies
love the
and
council
gentlemen,
for supporting it. So thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Judge Sheila Calloway, our juvenile court judge. Thank you for being, first of all, thank you for being on the show. Thank you for what you do and all the interesting things that you're working on. All the people on your staff, you're working on making a difference, and we really, really appreciate it. All right. And there's so many different things I want to follow up with you on. We have to get off for this call, but at some point I'm going to call you and come visit you. And the work that you do is vital. So thank you very, very much. All right.
Thank you.
All right. And I'll call you about when my birthday is so you can sing me happy birthday. Okay. All right. Everybody, thanks. Have a great weekend. Thanks again, Judge Calloway. Everybody be safe. We'll see you next week. All right. So long.